Okay, let's unpack this. What if everything you thought you knew about how the universe began, what you are, and, well, the very nature of reality was just a tiny surface level view?
Hmm.
Imagine exploring a system of thought that claims to tap into secrets guarded for long eons and ages. Secrets about a reality so absolute it's kind of beyond human thought.
All right.
Where matter isn't just inert stuff but possesses soul. Where light could be called cold flame. And even fundamental forces like heat and gravity are understood in, well, radical new ways.
Yeah, that's the kind of territory we're diving into today. It's profoundly challenging and uh, deeply fascinating ground, isn't it?
It really is.
We're stepping into a vast system of esoteric philosophy, drawing specifically from key excerpts provided to us from the Secret Doctrine by H.P.
That
Blavatsky.
text, it's notorious for its complexity.
Absolutely. It presents this comprehensive system of ideas about the origin of the cosmos, the evolution of humanity, and the intricate, often hidden relationship between spirit and matter.
And all from a perspective that's just vastly different from, conventional Western science or religion.
Exactly. And our mission in this deep dive is to act as your guides, right here with you, pulling out the most important insights and core nuggets from these dense pages.
Think of it as your shortcut, tailored just for you to understanding some foundational concepts of Theosophy, how it presents its ancient wisdom.
And how it directly engages with and contrasts itself with the science and religion prevalent at the time it was written.
Yeah, it's a tremendous amount to absorb, but we'll navigate it together, aiming to make sense of its central claims.
So let's begin by addressing something the source material clarifies right at the outset, which is crucial for setting the stage.
Okay.
If you've encountered discussions around these teachings before, you might have heard them referred to simply as esoteric Buddhism.
Ah, right. And the text is quick to correct this, saying essentially, hold on, it's not that simple.
Precisely. It explicitly clarifies that the teachings presented within the Secret Doctrine are not limited to Buddhism, nor are they merely an expansion of the specific book titled Esoteric Buddhism that was published earlier.
So why make that distinction so clearly?
Well, the author explains that making this distinction is really necessary because earlier presentations led to significant misunderstandings and mischaracterizations, particularly by opponents of Theosophy.
I see. So people were getting the wrong idea.
Exactly. There were claims that these teachings were neither genuinely esoteric nor authentically Buddhist. So these volumes, The Secret Doctrine, are offered not as a mere reiteration, but to supplement and significantly enlarge upon those earlier, perhaps incomplete outlines.
It's presented more like this is a glimpse into something much bigger.
Yes, the assertion is that these are glimpses into a much vaster, hitherto hidden teaching.
And the source is very specific about why it can only present a small corner of this teaching, isn't it?
It is. It states quite clearly that true esoteric truths are not disseminated widely or indiscriminately, especially not to what it terms a mocking, unbelieving world.
So the idea is these are powerful, maybe even dangerous truths.
That's the implication. Sacred, powerful truths that are carefully guarded. It even goes so far as to suggest that even the greatest living adept, a master of this knowledge, wouldn't be permitted by the universal law governing such things to reveal the full, unadulterated scope of these teachings.
Teachings preserved for eons, it says.
Right, which have been concealed and preserved for eons. It sets a powerful tone, establishing that this work isn't meant to be the final, exhaustive word on the universe.
More like a partial unveiling.
Exactly, an outline drawing from an immense ancient reservoir of wisdom. It implies layers of meaning that require preparation and, well, a certain receptivity to grasp. Not everything can or should be revealed at once.
Okay, so with that context that we're looking at a piece of a vast, ancient, guarded wisdom tradition, let's dive into what the source presents as the absolute bedrock.
The foundation.
Yeah, the three fundamental propositions upon which the Secret Doctrine is built. These are presented as like universal, axiomatic truths about reality itself.
The first of these propositions, let's call it A, describes an omnipresent, eternal, boundless, and immutable principle.
Okay, big words. What does that mean?
It means something utterly beyond the reach of human conception, thought, or even expression. The source struggles with language here, calling it the rootless root.
The rootless root. Interesting.
It emphasizes that it is beingness rather
Yeah.
than being, using the term sad, specifically because it's described as being devoid of attributes.
So no qualities, no characteristics.
None. There's no relation whatsoever to manifested, finite, conditioned being, anything we could possibly think of or describe.
So it's trying to articulate something so ultimate, so primary, that any attempt to define it just diminishes it, pulls it down into the limited world.
Precisely. The source suggests that the only way for you, the reader, to even begin to approach this concept is to intellectually postulate this absolute reality as existing before all manifested being.
Like you just have to accept it as a starting point.
Kind of. It notes that something similar has been dimly formulated in some European philosophy as the unconscious or the unknowable.
Right.
But here it's presented as the ultimate unconditioned source from which everything else flows, yet to which nothing conditioned can be compared or related.
It's a radical departure from the idea of a personal creator God, isn't it? Someone you can describe and interact with.
Absolutely. This is an impersonal, ultimate principle. It's the source of existence, but not a being in any sense we can comprehend.
Which leads us nicely to the second proposition, B. What's that about?
This asserts the eternity of the universe in its totality. But, and this is key, it's not the eternity of a static, unchanging thing.
Okay, so eternal but moving, changing.
Exactly. It's described as a boundless plane that is periodically, cyclically, the playground of numberless universes.
Numberless universes, wow.
And these universes are constantly manifesting and disappearing, almost like the breaths of that one unknowable principle we just discussed.
So creation isn't a one-time thing, like a big bang and that's it.
And not at all in this view. It's an eternal process of cosmic cycles. The source makes a crucial distinction here between boundless duration, which it calls kala, absolute, beginningless, endless duration, and conditioned, periodical time, which it calls khandakala. This limited, measured time, the kind we experience, is seen as an effect of Mahat.
Mahat, what's Mahat?
Universal mind or intelligence coming into manifestation. This concept of eternal cycles is deeply fundamental and connects strongly to Eastern philosophies, particularly Hindu philosophy.
Right, you see echoes there.
Definitely. Referencing concepts like Brahman, Parabrahman, the absolute versus its manifested aspect, Mula Prakriti, undifferentiated versus differentiated substance, and the grand cycles of manifestation, Manvantara.
Manvantara. And
Followed by dissolution, Pralaya.
Manifestation and dissolution, like breathing.
Exactly. And the source even goes into specific types of dissolution to emphasize how comprehensive this cyclic view is. It mentions 4 kinds.
4 kinds, let's hear them.
Naimitika, described as occasional, like Brahma's night, or period of rest. Then Prakritika, a natural elemental dissolution that brings things back partially to their original nature.
Okay, 2 more.
Atyantika, which is an absolute dissolution through identification with the supreme spirit, basically liberation. And finally, Nitya, a perpetual dissolution.
Perpetual, happening all the time.
Yeah, likened to the constant change and renewal happening constantly, even in sleep, like cells dying and being replaced.
So this layered understanding really reinforces that existence, from the tiniest particle to the whole universe, is just perpetually flowing.
In and out of manifestation according to these grand impersonal cycles, it's an eternal cosmic breath, a rhythm of coming into being and passing away infinitely.
Okay, that's huge. What about the third proposition, C? You said this one hits closer to home.
It does. This one focuses on the nature of our individual existence and destiny within this vast cosmic framework. It states the fundamental identity of all souls with the universal oversoul.
All souls are one with the oversoul.
Fundamentally, yes. And this universal oversoul is itself presented as an aspect of that ultimate unknown root we discussed first, that beingness.
Okay, connected back to the beginning.
And here is the absolutely critical part. Every single individual soul, every spark of this universal oversoul must undergo an obligatory pilgrimage.
Obligatory, like no choice.
That's how it's presented. This pilgrimage is referred to as the cycle of incarnation, or the cycle of necessity. It operates according to impersonal, universal, cyclic, and karmic laws.
Karma again. And cyclic laws.
Right. And this journey unfolds throughout the entire term of a Manvantara, that vast period of universal manifestation we mentioned.
Okay, so over immense timescales.
Immense. And the key detail here, perhaps one of the most challenging from many perspectives, is that this journey takes the soul through every form.
Wait, every form? You mean like?
Of the mineral, vegetable, animal, and human kingdoms and beyond.
Mineral. Like a rock.
Yeah.
Then a plant, animal, human. Ah, wow, that's a lot.
It is. The source is quite firm on this, stating that no other fate is possible for any soul, ranging from the lowest atom up to the highest archangel, when viewed from this ultimate perspective.
So everything is on this journey.
Everything that has a soul spark. It identifies the monad, which in this system is understood as the Atma Buddhi Higher Manas Trinity.
Atma Buddhi Manas, the spiritual core.
Yes, the eternal spiritual essence combined with the spiritual soul and higher mind. That is the entity making this monumental pilgrimage. And as it journeys, it's said to reflect every root form of each kingdom it passes through.
So it gathers experience from every level of existence.
That's the idea. These three propositions, taken together, offer a profoundly different framework for understanding reality than many familiar views, wouldn't you say?
Definitely. An impersonal, absolute, not a personal God. Eternal cycles, not a single creation. And this universal journey through everything.
Right. The idea of the monad, the core spiritual essence within each of us, being an eternal traveler through the entire spectrum of existence and reflecting all those forms, is a central impactful insight of this system.
It really redefines what I am, doesn't it? I'm not just this temporary human thing.
Exactly. You're a spark of ultimate consciousness on an unimaginable journey spanning not just human lifetimes, but the entire breadth of manifested existence, continually unfolding within this vast, cyclic universe. It provides a sense of immense scale and interconnectedness.
Okay, so that's the foundation. Where do we go from there? How does the actual universe start unfolding?
Well, having laid out these highest, most abstract principles, the source then proceeds to describe how this grand process of cosmic evolution itself unfolds, moving from that absolute state down into the differentiated manifested universe. This is detailed in those mysterious verses known as the stanzas of Dian.
The stanzas, right? Let's look at stanza I. It tries to describe the state before anything manifests.
Yes, a state of absolute rest, of non-differentiation. The source uses this poetic, almost paradoxical language. Things like, nor ought nor not existed, yon bright sky was not.
Very evocative.
Darkness alone was father, mother, Svabhavat, and Svabhavat was in darkness.
Svabhavat, that's the primordial principle again.
Yes, the father-mother aspect existing solely within the darkness of this pre-manifest state. Potential for everything, but nothing actualized yet. The future creators, the seven sons, aren't born yet.
It uses imagery like an ocean without light.
Exactly. Emphasizing the challenge of describing this ultimate potentiality before any form, color, or activity arises, language strains against its limits here.
And then stanza the second, the first stirring.
The moment of awakening, yes.
Yeah.
The initial impulse towards manifestation, the last vibration of the seventh eternity thrills through infinitude. This marks the transition from absolute duration, kala, to conditioned time, kandakala.
The first tick of the cosmic clock, sort of.
You could put it that way. And the source uses a really powerful visual metaphor here. The mother swells, expanding from within without, like the bud of the lotus.
Ah, the lotus bud. Beautiful image.
The mother is identified as Mula Prakriti, the undifferentiated primordial substance, the veil of Parabrahman. It's this potential substance beginning its process of differentiation and unfolding.
So the universe starts to bloom.
And the source also explicitly clarifies here that these stanzas focus specifically on the cosmogenesis and evolution of our solar system and our planetary chain.
Okay, so it's local in that sense, our corner of the cosmos.
Relatively speaking, yes.
Yeah.
And those seven sons mentioned earlier, they become the creative intelligences, the architects of this particular system and chain.
Got it. That lotus image is really sticking with me, latent potential becoming active. So this stirring leads to more specific energies.
Exactly. Emanations of divine energies and hierarchies, which we find described in stanza the third. Here we see the emergence of the logos.
The logos, like the word.
Similar concept. The source describes it as the center of energy, the firstborn of Nana, or divine wisdom. It identifies this principle with fundamental concepts across different traditions. The verbum, the divine Christos, Avalokiteshvara.
So it's not created instantly, it exists potentially.
Yes, within the bosom of Parabrahman during Pralaya, the dissolution phase. But at the very start of cosmic activity, the dawn of a Manvantara, it emerges as a distinct, conscious center of energy.
How does it relate to the absolute, Parabrahman?
The source explains that the Logos perceives or reflects Parabrahman through Mula Prakriti, that primordial substance which acts like a veil or the mighty expanse of cosmic matter. The Logos then acts as the one unifying energy principle operating through Mula Prakriti, guiding the unfolding.
So it's like the intermediary, the active principle.
Precisely. Parabrahm itself can't directly interact with matter, so the logos is the necessary bridge, the center of spiritual energy initiating cosmic activity.
Okay, and then it gets even more intricate, right? There's a female logos.
Yes, and this is perhaps unexpected for some. This principle is known by various names: Kuan Yin, Vak, Isis, Sophia, Saphira, Saraswati. It represents the active, manifesting forces in nature.
How is it described?
Often in terms of sound or vibration, the word, voice, sound, speech. The source calls it the melodious heaven of sound.
Sound as a creative force.
That's the idea. This female logos, Vak, is said to manifest in 4 aspects: Vaikari, Madhyama, Pasyanti, and Para.
4 levels of cosmic sound?
Kind of. Para is the highest, unmanifest, identical with Parabrahm. Pasyanti is divine ideas, the logos itself. Madhyama is the subtle light or energy, and Vaikari is the manifested cosmos as we perceive it.
So the physical universe is the lowest vibration of this cosmic sound.
Effectively, yes. The universe is the verbum, manifested as cosmos. The divine speech become tangible reality. A powerful idea, isn't it? That the universe isn't just stuff, but a kind of divine utterance.
It really is. The stanza also talks about numbers and geometry, doesn't it?
Crucially, it underscores their role as fundamental symbols. The 3, representing spirit or the active principle, often drawn as a triangle,
Right.
fall to the 4, representing matter or the passive principle, the quaternary. And the radiant essence becomes 7 inside, 7 outside, pointing to the septenary nature of everything.
7 everywhere.
Pretty much. The luminous egg, or Hiranyagarbha, the cosmic matrix, is also described as 3, representing its triple aspects or hypostases.
So numbers and shapes aren't just abstract math here.
Not at all. They're seen as basic symbols embodying universal principles known to occultists. The source connects these to Kabbalah numbers like 10, 6, 5, linking them to mysteries of the cosmos. 10 is called the mother of the soul.
Implying a hidden science within numbers.
A universal science, yes. Understanding reality through comprehending the significance of these sacred numbers.
Okay, so we have the absolute, the first stirrings, the logos, these hierarchies. What about matter itself? Primordial matter.
The source gets into that too. It states that primordial matter is eternal and coeval with space. And importantly, it's described as being in a state of absolute potential, neither hot nor cold, but it is of its own special nature.
So heat and cold are secondary qualities, not fundamental.
Exactly. They're relative properties that only appear in the manifested differentiated worlds. Latent primordial matter is the cold virgin, pure potential. When awakened by cosmic energy, it becomes the mother, the active substance.
It even mentions myths about cold mist and slime.
Yes, drawing parallels to ancient Western myths, where cold mist is father and prolific slime or Elis is mother, to illustrate this concept.
And this primordial matter before it wakes up, what's it like?
It's described as a cool radiance, colorless, formless, tasteless, and devoid of every quality we associate with matter. Pure potential substance.
At its first children.
Its firstborn are called 4 sons. These are primal centers of force. Initially they are 1, showing unity, but then they become 7, reflecting that septenary principle of differentiation.
These are the beginnings of elements.
They're seen as the primal centers of forces, or atoms, which later develop into the great cosmic elements. The source acknowledges modern science finding many more elements, but sees them as further differentiations of these primal forces.
Does it try to relate them to chemistry back then?
It does, using analogies from 19th century chemistry, calling them things like parahydrogenic, paraoxygenic, describing them as supersensuous yet atomic substances with positive and negative aspects.
Supersensuous atoms, okay. And how do the guiding intelligences fit in, the Dihan Chohans?
They spring from the effulgency of light, the ray from the absolute darkness. They are the reawakened energies guiding the process. The source uses a complex sequence of numbers, 1 from the egg, 6 and 5, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5, summing to twice 7, the total.
Numbers again, mapping the process.
Yes, representing the unfolding hierarchy. Essences, flames, elements, builders, numbers, moving from formless, arupa, to form, rupa, representing force or divine man. From this divine man emanate forms, sparks, sacred animals, elemental principles, and messengers, Petrus.
It's a very symbolic way of describing creation unfolding in stages. Does it connect this to Western thought at all?
It does, interestingly, bringing in Paracelsus.
Paracelsus, the alchemist.
That's him. It references his concept of Yalaiaster, the primordial proto-materia from which the cosmos evolved. This Yalaiaster divides into idios, also called chaos or mysterium magnum.
And what is idios?
It's monistic, unified, but manifests as vital activity, spiritual force, invisible power, vital matter. It contains everything in potentia, in possibility, but not yet in actual form. The source notes this anticipates modern ideas about the potency of matter.
And Paracelsus's elements.
Aries, which Paracelsus used for a cosmic force, is equated here with Fohat, the dynamic energy driving differentiation. Production, creation is a consequence of separation. The classical elements fire, water, air, earth aren't born from just mixing stuff.
But spiritually, dynamically.
Exactly. Paracelsus is quoted saying these elements are invisible, spiritual entities, they have souls, and spring from the mysterium magnum.
Elements having souls, that's a direct challenge to materialism.
A very clear counterpoint. It highlights how the source tries to show a common thread between ancient traditions and even figures in Western esoteric thought, presenting a view where spirit and matter are inseparable from the start.
Okay, so we've gone from the absolute down to primordial matter and elements. Now let's zoom in more on our specific corner planetary chains and rounds.
Right. The whole system, according to the source, is fundamentally septenary, based on 7. Our Earth, the physical planet,
Yes.
is presented as just one of a chain of 7 globes. This visible Earth is merely the physical, lowest plane representative of its invisible superior companions in that chain.
7 globes in our chain, invisible ones.
6 invisible ones on different planes. These 7 globes are linked to corresponding planetary divisions and also, fascinatingly, to the human principles, suggesting a deep resonance between cosmic structure and us.
So Earth isn't alone, it's part of a system evolving together.
Exactly. And like the other globes in its chain, Earth has to pass through 7 grand phases of evolution called rounds.
7 rounds for Earth. What happens during these rounds?
They're distinct developmental epochs. During the first 3 rounds, the globe is forming, consolidating, getting denser. During the 4th round, which is our current period, it settles, hardens, becomes fully physical.
We're in the 4th round now, the most physical stage.
That's the idea. Then, during the last 3 rounds to come, it gradually spiritualizes again, returning towards its first ethereal, non-physical form.
So it descends into matter and then ascends back out.
Over vast timescales, yes.
Yeah.
The number 7 is just everywhere, 7 globes, 7 rounds, 7 principles in man. And a really critical point about Earth's place. Humanity, as we recognize ourselves with mind and consciousness,
Yes.
only fully develops and becomes truly human in this 4th current round.
Meaning before the 4th round, on the earlier globes or earlier phases of this globe, it wasn't really human.
It was the monadic stream destined to become human, but it was passing through preparatory forms in kingdoms, like a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. The source says MNN is the first fully formed entity, in the true sense, on Globe D, Earth, in this 4th round, after the mineral and vegetable kingdoms finish their evolution here.
And it even says the vegetable kingdom evolves through us now.
In some sense, yes. And in the 3 rounds yet to come, humanity and the globe will tend to reassume their primeval, ethereal, dienchohanic form, spiritualizing further.
Okay. Now what about the other planets we see? Mars, Venus, Jupiter. Are they part of our chain?
This is a crucial clarification the source makes. No, they are not. Mars, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter, and so on do not belong to our Earth's chain.
So they aren't the higher globes of our chain.
Definitely not. They're the visible, physical representatives, the Globe D, you could say, of their own entirely separate septenary chains, each existing across multiple planes.
Each with his own 7 globes.
Yes. Their upper globes are invisible to us, but they are distinct evolutionary systems. And, the source adds, there are countless other chains out there.
That's a really key distinction. So our journey is specific to our 7 globe chain with Earth as the physical point right now. We're not hopping over to physical Mars.
Correct. They have their own life streams, their own evolutionary paths, independent of ours. The source stresses this to correct a common misunderstanding. It sets a clear boundary around our local evolutionary unit.
Okay, that makes sense. So moving from the planetary scale down to us, anthropogenesis, human evolution, especially the early stages.
Right. The source dives into the evolution from divine beings, the Dianes or sons of wisdom, down to the very first physical, though rudimentary, human races on this globe in this 4th round. It involves the monads on their pilgrimage and the globe going through its rounds.
And the early races, they reproduce differently, radically differently.
Radically. It mentions underlying principles like elementary germs and 7 Leyu centers, energy points on the globe. Stanza 6 describes the second race being produced by something like budding and expansion.
Budding, like a plant.
Sort of. As sexual forms from a sexless shadow. The source admits this is hard for the Western mind to grasp, but it points to analogies in nature. Organisms that switch between sexual and asexual stages, reproduction by fission or budding, like an amoeba, but on a much earlier, more ethereal level.
And these were the Chayas, shadows.
Yes, the shadows of the sons of twilight, an earlier group of Dhyanis. They were ethereal, asexual, and crucially, hadn't developed Kamarupa yet, the desire principle.
So they reproduced unconsciously, automatically.
Like plants or amoeba, yes, on a less physical plane than ours. Then stanza the 7th introduces the third race. Things get more solid here.
How did they start?
As egg-born, the language is very mystical. The sweat grew, its drops grew, and the drops became hard and round. This fluid from earlier forms congealed into egg-like structures.
Warmed by the sun, cooled by the moon.
Exactly. Cosmic and terrestrial elements nurtured them. These were overshadowed by the white swan, symbolizing the egg of the future race, the man swan, the first male-female, still androgynous potential.
And only later in the third race did sexes separate.
Yes. And the source connects this ancient process to modern embryology in a fascinating way.
How so?
It says in the beginning, the inner spiritual man was externalized. The spiritual shaped the outer form, like the lotus opening. But after sex is separated, it reversed. Now, the physical embryo recapitulates past forms, plant, reptile, animal stages, before becoming human.
While the inner ethereal form develops within.
Exactly. In the beginning, the astral was formed first, but was senseless, lacking mind, and got entangled in matter.
These are definitely not standard biology textbook descriptions, very symbolic.
Very. They're presented as necessary phases in the monad's long descent into physical, differentiated human form.
And a huge event happened in the third race involving the Sons of Wisdom.
Absolutely pivotal. Described in stanzas the 7th. These sons of wisdom, or Dhyan Chohans, beings evolved in prior cycles came down and saw the state of the early third race forms.
Calling them vile forms, the mindless men, Amanasa.
Yes, these sons of wisdom had fully developed mind, manas, and could choose. Some entered fully into these rudimentary forms, incarnated completely.
It became Arhats, highly developed beings.
So the source says. Others projected only a spark, a ray of their manas, leaving those individuals less developed, destitute of knowledge.
And some didn't incarnate at all.
Right. A third group held back, leaving that segment of the third race entirely mindless, Amanasa.
So this is the giving of mind moment, explaining different levels of consciousness early on.
Exactly. It explains the initial diversity. Some got the full light, some a spark, some none initially.
Which leads right into something dramatic in stanza 8. The sin of the mindless men. What was that?
The Amanasa, those lacking manas, guided by instinct and the newly emerging desire principle, committed this sin. It was their union, their interbreeding with early animal forms.
Interbreeding with animals.
Yes. Seeing this, the laws, another group of spirits who had initially refused to animate these senseless forms, wept. They saw it as a defilement of humanity, the vessel they would eventually inhabit or guide. And they called the consequence karma.
So not a moral sin by conscious beings, but an instinctive act with karmic consequences.
Precisely. An act born of mindlessness, but it had repercussions. Those laws then chose to incarnate in the other groups, the ones who had received mind, to teach them better.
And after that, everyone eventually got manas and understood the earlier act.
Yes. Once they had mind, they saw the sin committed while mindless. The union was with early animal mammalians, animal monsters existing before humanity was fully rational. The source presents this as logically bridging the gap between human and animal consciousness.
And explaining apes, not as ancestors, but a side effect.
Exactly. A sideline resulting from this unnatural union, producing degraded hybrid lines. It's explicitly contrasted with Darwinism.
But what about the biology? Man-animal hybrids are sterile now.
The source addresses that head-on. It argues conditions were fundamentally different millions of years ago, different planes, different evolutionary stages. It claims animals only started breeding strictly within species relatively recently, since the Atlanteans.
And it points to things like mules as exceptions even now.
Yes, mules, leporines, dog hybrids, hybrid cattle. Arguing sterility isn't an absolute law, suggesting fertile unions were possible under archaic conditions.
It's really weaving its own narrative against the science of the time.
Definitely. Using its own framework and perceived scientific exceptions, the sin is framed as a karmic consequence, a deflection in evolution due to a mindless act.
And stanza IX mentions the separation of sexes during the third race too.
Another crucial development. And the source links this deeply to symbolism in world traditions.
How so?
It connects it to Jehovah in the Kabbalah, seen not as the supreme God, but Jehovah, a male-female generative principle.
Hmm.
The Adam and Eve story, Cain and Abel, all reinterpreted.
Adam from dust, Virgo from his rib, symbolizing separation.
Yes, the pure principle separating and falling into physical generation. Jehovah becomes the god of generation, linked to the lunar Mount Sinai. The sanctuary, originally the womb of nature, gets anthropomorphized, phallicized, as divinity gets dragged down into matter.
It's a really profound reinterpretation of familiar stories as evolutionary allegories.
Suggesting they describe the descent into physical generation and the entanglement of spirit with matter.
Okay, so after these early races, we get into the later root races and cataclysms.
Exactly. The source discusses 4 great root races preceding our current 5th race, the Adamic race. These evolved on different continents that mostly don't exist anymore.
It gives names like Arianum Vigo, Svetadwepa, Mount Meru.
Yes, archaic names. The first race was ethereal, the 4th race were the Atlanteans. The whole progression shows a descent from ethereal down into dense physicality and then a slow climb back up.
Ethereal, a sexual androgyne, separated sexes, physical giants, Pisces. Is that roughly it?
That's the general trajectory described. And the 4th race, the Atlanteans, were said to be gigantic.
Giants? Seriously, how does it support that?
By referencing traditions of giants found everywhere. It mentions the builders of the Cholula Pyramid in Mexico, citing chroniclers like Donnelly and Duran. It argues skeletons exist but are mostly lost under oceans or disintegrated over millions of years.
Hard to prove then.
Very. But it cites classical writers, early archaeology like Boucher de Perthes, finding evidence of ancient man, zodiac signs like Atlas and Orion, even Chinese accounts of the Maozi as an antediluvian race.
So for this source, giants were real, a previous phase of humanity.
The 4th root race, yes. And these vast epochs were punctuated by massive cataclysms. The source talks about multiple deluges, often confused into one.
Not just Noah's flood.
No. The great cataclysm that destroyed the main Atlantean continent was one major event. But Lemuria, the 3rd race continent, sank even earlier, mostly due to earthquakes and fires, not submergence like Atlantis.
And this sinking and rising isn't random.
It follows a periodical law acting throughout the Earth's manventeric cycle. The source even predicts Britain and Europe will eventually sink based on this law.
Wow. It contrasts this cyclical view with modern science-denying tradition.
Sharply. It says Plato confused the final small island of Atlantis with the earlier vast continents. And it links flood myths globally. Peruvian Incas, 7 survivors. Mexican, twice 7. Chaldean Shisutras, 7 gods. Chinese Yao, 7 figures. Egyptian Osiris, 7 rays.
Seeing common threads pointing to multiple lines.
Yes, and suggesting deeper symbolic meanings too. Flood allegories relate to pre-cosmic transformations, the flood of waters as primordial matter, chaos, awakened by spirit rays.
So it works on multiple levels, cosmic and terrestrial.
Exactly.
Huh.
Just as figures like Anu and Bel preceded Adam, Kadmon, and Noah, figures like Brahma, Vishnu, Siva preceded Vaivasvata Manu in India. The Matsya avatar, Vishnu as a fish-saving Manu,
Yes.
is linked to a specific event after a pole shift sank a continent and raised current lands. And it insists gods, highly evolved beings, were physically present on Earth then.
It's weaving together myth, geology, cosmology into one grand narrative.
A sweeping synthesis, suggesting global myths are fragmented accounts of real cosmic and terrestrial events, all pointing to cycles of evolution, cataclysm, and renewal, guided by intelligences.
Now, a big part of this is how it engages with and critiques the science and religion of its day, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It doesn't present its system in a vacuum.
Yeah.
The critique of modern science, especially its materialism and skepticism, is a major theme.
What's the main criticism?
That materialism blocks deeper truth by limiting understanding to physical senses. Skepticism needs balance with intuition, spirituality, otherwise it's just another dogma. It points out specific inconsistencies it sees in science then.
Like what?
Like atoms being called inert yet perfectly elastic, a contradiction. Or reducing everything to matter in motion but denying inherent kinetic energy. It talks about the blindness of physicists not seeing the implications of their own theories, citing contradictory statements from scientists like Tate, Stewart, Du Bois-Reymond.
It even questions gravity.
Fundamentally, argues it's an effect, not a cause, driven by subtler energies. It predicts the theory of gravitation will be replaced, like the old corpuscular theory of light was.
Does it cite any scientists who doubted it?
It brings up Newton's own musings about attraction being an impulse via a subtle spirit, and Cuvier's doubts about forces maybe being spiritual powers.
And forces like heat and light, not just modes of motion.
No. It argues they have a substantial nature, however supersensuous. The vibration theory describes effects on our plane, but not the underlying causes operating on higher planes, which only occult masters can perceive. Magnetism, it insists, is not a mode of motion.
So occult science is presented as superior, more complete.
That's the claim. Changeless, based on direct perception over millennia, offering a deeper understanding than the ever-changing materialistic views of modern science. It's a direct challenge to the 19th century paradigm.
How does it define matter and energy, then, from its own perspective?
For occultists, matter isn't just physical stuff. It's the totality of existences across all planes of perception, subtle to dense. Forces originate in the vital principle, the one life permeating the solar system.
Not just properties of matter.
No, expressions of this one life. It uses science changing its mind about heat, from fluid to motion, as an example of science being ever becoming, while occult science remains consistent.
It talks about ether in detail too, doesn't it? More than just a medium for light.
Much more. An all-pervading substance, filling everything: space, bodies, plants, earth, metal. Physical particles are held by it, also called astral light.
And states of matter: solid, liquid, gas.
Determined by the capacity of physical matter to interact with the sun force or life energy flowing through the ether. Heat, caloric influx flux, causes state changes. Hardness depends on proportions of ethereal and ponderable matter. It even cites someone named Metcalfe supporting this.
It's a very different model of physics, based on ether and life force.
A complex, multi-dimensional model connecting physical phenomena to different planes and a universal life force.
Does it engage with chemistry, too? Beyond the primal elements?
It does. It notes late 19th century findings about meta-elements, DeCroix, Nelson, and the splitting of elements like didymium and yttrium.
Which science was struggling to classify.
Right. Subtle spectral and chemical differences blurred the lines. It references Sir William Crookes questioning the nature of elements in his Genesis of the Elements lectures.
And the source sees this as
Confirmation. Corroborating esoteric philosophy about the composite nature of elements and how they're formed, implying science is catching up to ancient knowledge.
Shifting to philosophy, it compares the monad to Leibniz.
Yes, Leibniz saw monads as immaterial, metaphysical points, real souls whose essence is force. The source draws a parallel.
How does it match?
It draws a line. The unknowable essence, parabron, versus the comprehensible presence, miliprakriti shikina, where the logos vibrates. From this presence evolve egos beings. Essence is spiritual force, substance is elements, bodies are atoms when needed. Leibniz, saying the primitive element is force, aligns with this. It even quotes a historian, Mertz, on Leibniz's monads being immaterial force points.
And the occultist's monad is specifically Atma Buddhi Higher Manas.
Exactly. The eternal spiritual self, spiritual soul, and higher mind. This is the eternal monad making the pilgrimage through all kingdoms: mineral, plant, animal, man, spirit, God eventually returning to the heavenly man.
And it's distinct from our everyday thinking mind and body.
Absolutely distinct from the lower manas entangled with desire and the physical body. It's the eternal spark. This synthesis bridges Western philosophy and Eastern esotericism on the fundamental unit of existence and its journey.
Finally, there's this huge connection to world religions and myths.
A massive part of it, arguing that ancient traditions, outwardly diverse, contain hidden esoteric truths expressed through common symbols, numbers, allegories.
It pulls examples from everywhere, doesn't it?
Astonishing range. Bible, Genesis, Patriarch, Zodiac, Puranas, Vyasas, multi-layered allegories, Egyptian texts, Book of the Dead, Thoth, Kabbalah, Sephiroth, Adam, Cadmon, Numbers, Chaldean, Book of Numbers, Xisuthros, Greek, Plato, Pythagoras, Eros, Phoenician cosmogony, claiming a common thread doctrine.
And it decodes symbols, like the lotus.
Yes, lotus as productive power, hermaphrodite, Mount Meru, its petals linked to principal planes, the serpent to originally wisdom, Gnosis, the dual logos, opponent of ignorance tempting towards knowledge, Lucifer the light bearer, a savior for spiritual man.
Contrasted with Jehovah.
Right, who sought to keep man ignorant. Numbers and geometry are key again. 3, spirit, to 4, matter. Numbers 3, 4, 7, 10, 12, linked to cosmic processes. Zodiac, patriarchs, tribal banners, Urim Thummim, cherubim, all interpreted astrologically, cosmically.
And figures like Jehovah and Satan get completely reframed.
Totally. Jehovah as Jehovah, male, female, god of physical generation, linked to the separation of sexes, lower than Adam Cadmon. Satan is the necessary adversary, dragon of wisdom challenging ignorance, opposing the demiurge Jehovah, liberating the spiritual man.
And female deities: Isis, Sophia, Kuan Yin.
all connected to the female logos, the soul of the world, Mother Nature, the primordial waters, the active plastic maternal principle giving form to the divine idea.
It even cites specific Eastern texts.
Like the Anujita saying, entities are created by svabhava, inherent nature, not physical cause. It identifies Dhyani Buddhas, highest cosmic intelligences, with Manasaputra, sons of mind, rishis, prajapatis across traditions, and cyclical patterns like Vishnu appearing as Vyasas or Vasishta's sons reincarnating.
It's trying to build a unified esoteric reading of all world traditions.
A grand synthesis, suggesting they all hold fragmented keys to one ancient hidden wisdom, describing the same cosmic processes and the soul's journey.
So we've covered a huge amount of ground in this deep dive, haven't we?
We certainly have. From the unknowable absolute through cosmic cycles, the logos, primordial matter, human evolution with its strange early phases and races.
The giving of mind, separation of sexes, cataclysms, and how it all relates to science, religion, and myth according to the source.
It's a vast, intricate picture, attempting a comprehensive framework for reality, from the ultimate down to the atom and back again.
And for you, the listener, the relevance here is that these concepts, challenging as they are, offer a fundamentally different lens to view reality.
A view of evolution, not just physical, but spiritual, purposeful. A view of consciousness distinguishing the eternal spark from the temporary personality. And this profound interconnectedness of everything through the monads and the one life.
This deep dive, using just the excerpts provided, aimed to give you those key aha moments, connecting the dots as the source itself does.
It's a curated guide, pulling out the essentials from incredibly dense material, offering a foundational grasp without you having to read the whole thing.
It definitely pushes you to think beyond the familiar, consider a reality far grander, more complex.
Indeed. It invites a different way of looking at the world, ourselves, and the universe's purpose.
So, to leave you with a final thought straight from the source, something to chew on, reflecting its ideas on universal law and individual choice.
Okay.
The Secret Doctrine states, karma has never sought to destroy intellectual and individual liberty. It is not the wave which drowns a man, but the personal action of the wretch, who goes deliberately and places himself under the impersonal action of the laws that govern the ocean's motion.
That's powerful. It suggests that even within the system of vast cycles and impersonal laws like karma, there's still room for individual choice and responsibility.
Our experience isn't arbitrary punishment.
But the result of our own actions interacting with the unchanging principles of the universe, we place ourselves in the path of the wave, so to speak.
Definitely something to think about and perhaps explore further long after our deep dive concludes.